I would like to hear from you when speaking about being an Israeli in a global company. What are the differences that you saw in in attitudes, in action styles, maybe based on what we saw here as drivers and professionals? And we'll start with Amos.
Okay.
With Amos.
Exactly. We start with age. And male in the case of
Yeah.
Israel, right? Okay, a little bit about Makteshi Magan. Not sure how many are familiar. We see it on the best place to work survey, where we are. People say Makteshi Magan who? So we are. People used to think of us as chemicals, but practically we are in agriculture. There are two things that Israel does not have. It doesn't have a land and it doesn't have a water. There are two things that Israel is very innovative with really breakthrough. One is agriculture and the second one is water. I don't know how many of you knows, but the water issue in Israel created a lot of innovation, and practically, by the way, we solved the issue. There is no more water issue in Israel, but price, by the way. That has to do with politics. And agriculture, we export to all over the world, and we are a company that deals with agriculture, crop protection. We are part of the food chain, and we have been a company who is more than 60 years, founded with the Israeli state, even a little bit before, in the south of Israel, Makteshi Magan, Makteshim and Agan, two different companies that merged together. So huge history, and became what Nurit is saying, international, by being exporting most of what we do. We are not the one who are taking the treasures out of Israel, so to say. Always in the television they say, you know, Makteshi Magan is stealing the natural treasures. That's not us. We are bringing most of our raw materials from China. We do what we do, and then we export 99% of what we do to abroad. $2.7 billion, 50 subsidiaries around the world. In the Americas, the largest one is Brazil, $500 million, with over 500 people, as well as in Argentina, Mexico, Costa Rica, Ecuador, etc. I will not count all of them. US, 5 companies in the US, Canada, Europe, everywhere. In the emerging markets, headquartered in Singapore, Australia, India, as well as Vietnam, Thailand, Japan, etc.
Very international.
We even sell in Israel, though it's not much. But it's a kind of a beta site where we make a lot of our experiments, and in Africa. Selling in over than 120 countries, and in the last years going through a huge transformation, which I call it a roller coaster, and it's a great fun to be in such a traditional old chemical, which is not anymore chemical, as I said, agriculture, part of one of the largest, I would say, challenge of this world, and that's food. Don't know how many of you know, but there is a food issue in the world. There is actually, we cannot feel it, but there is a problem, because we are already using most of the agricultural land, most of the water, and there are nearly hundreds of thousands people died every month out of hunger. There is a real issue on food. China realizing that, China being close to $1.5 billion, changing in their nutrition. They are becoming they are going through where the West goes. So the West goes on diet, and China goes on the into the meat and the bread, and therefore number one task for every official Chinese government is food security, and they are looking for a solution, and we are part of their solution. So we have been acquired by the Chinese government, a company called ChemChina. It's a company of $27 billion, 200,000 people, and they were looking for a global platform. They found in Makteshim Agan a suitable platform, so they acquired us in a process which is a reverse merge. So they acquired us from above in order for us to manage them. So that's the reverse merge. And that's what we are doing. We are currently building China. In China, by the way, we sold very little. The Chinese market in our area, agriculture, what we call crop protection, is already $4 billion, going to be the leading one. The current one is in Brazil. And we are going to be #1 in China, but not only in China. We are going to become we are already a leading company in what we call ourselves off-patent or generic, so quite similar to Teva in the pharmaceutical. We are the largest off-patent company in the agriculture food protection, crop protection. And we are aiming to become one of the largest three. So that was it, right? No. I just say a few words in relation to what was presented, and then I go to you. I was in a way lucky to work in companies that did not want to have an HR. So I started with Elite in the 90s, where the motto was no HR. They took it from Delta at the time.
Which still continues.
Yeah, well.
In a way.
Practically it never happens, by the way, not in Elite, not in Delta. They just like to hide the HR, and I will talk about it in a minute. And I actually, in the 90s, I joined Elite. I was an organizational consultant, and I never dreamt of becoming an HR. For me at the time, back in '85, for me HR people looked like the gatekeeper who is preventing any transformation from happening. That to me looked as an organizational consulting, coming to an organization, the major issue I had in terms of innovation, transformation, was an HR. So I'm very happy on the results now that the HR really, at least the Israeli one, made a huge transformation on the creative innovation, and you can feel it. I mean, HR in Israel went really through a huge transformation on that one. In terms of transformation. That was in Elite where I created the HR. At my time, Elite was changing tremendously. Nestle came in, the competition started, the monopoly of Elite broke, and we at that time we created what you know by now as a Strauss coffee in Poland, in east of Europe, etc. The same situation happened in Makteshim Agan, where they did not have an HR, and here I will just stress out several points that you mentioned in that sense. Makteshim Agan used to be two companies, Makteshim and Agan, managed from Israel. The HR used to be manpower with unions and with whatever you know. The 50 subsidiaries in the world, still today, most of them don't have an HR. Mostly it is done by the CFO or the assistant of the CEO, so to say. So, exactly. So the challenge was huge in that sense. So what you have here is a huge company. We are currently close to 5,000 people, $2.7 billion. By next year, by the way, after we conclude our integration, we will have another 15,000 people, so we will be 20,000. But they say, but that's Chinese. So and the people who said, but the Chinese are not realizing the huge gap on talent that exists in China and the huge challenges in China, as well, by the way, as on the huge gap we have on talent in Israel, in that sense, in terms of being global. In terms of global, there is a huge issue in Israel, and it goes beyond the English, by the way. And
can you focus on this?
It goes beyond the English. I think Israel, in general, we are excellent in change management. The non-Israelis, which before I joined, they used to call them foreigners. So I worked very hard to change the word foreigners into non-Israelis. Is calling this change management balagan. So I'm not sure of, is it a change management or an organized balagan, what we, the non-Israelis are saying. Around the time where I joined, it was very common in Makteshi Magan to nominate Israelis to the major key roles. So the main criteria to be promoted was being an Israeli, okay? Most of them with broken English, but that was the criteria. I'm glad to say after 5 years now, it is changed, and it is still changing. Okay, I will skip the rest. There is huge challenges in currently, because my major task was 50 subsidiaries, how to create the global HR from Israel, headquartered in Israel, managing 50 subsidiaries, and currently how to deal with Chinese owners that we are managing in the way I'm describing. I will skip and I'll go directly to some things that you have said, because I think they were quite interesting. So 3 things and I'm finishing. One is, I think that one of the major issue of, if you look in Israel, how many HR became CEOs? 2, 3 that I remember, not more. Kaul, and I don't think the audience even knows the name. Yeah. Okay. I think the issue is, I would ask myself, does HR people even have the ambition to become a CEO? Because I don't think that HR people have the ambition even to become a CEO, even though the profile is amazing, because I totally agree that HR people the profile is identified to CEO and has a lot of logic in it. Second is, I think HR still, at least in the organization I know, people want the support of the HR, but they want them on the back. They don't want them on the front. So, it's kind of like they would love to have the help as long as the HR is keeping the back seat and don't step into the front. And the third thing that you were talking about, Eli, is people coming into the HR from other disciplines. Well, at least in the companies I worked, that's the way they did it. They send people who failed into the HR. So, and maybe still doing it, So you find in the HR, like you failed, so okay, go to the HR. For example, in Elisra, Elbit, I had a division of 70 people that reported to me. Incredible. I mean, for an organization with 1,500 employees, which most of them has no capabilities even in the HR arena, to say the least. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Ronit, can you talk about being Israeli in a global company?
First, I just want to say that I was one that took the assessment. And I have to tell you, I just want to stop for a second and tell you this was amazing. When I saw my personal result, that shocked me. I actually sat with Nurit and told her, Nurit, I want to go over that with you, because there are so many smart things that you know about yourself, but you're not that focused to make sure that you understand when you choose your next career level and what you want to do. And when you see the results, that makes so much sense. So it's not only for them to have the data. I would encourage each one of you to know and to grow yourself by taking that 40 minutes. It worth a lot. You would enjoy that. So that's, yeah, honestly, it's amazing, really. The results, the summary, the way it's pronounced to you, the way that you can see that, you learn a lot about yourself. This is fun, and thank you for having me, actually.
You call them the...
Yeah, I wasn't asked to do that. I'm just telling you because that was my impression. That was something that I took with myself and I said, that's a brilliant tool. That's amazing. To your question, Nurit, actually it's fun to be Israeli and to try to understand global situations and what are you supposed to do. I was lucky enough in my career to start while I worked for American companies, the leading Fortune 500 LSI Logic at the beginning, then Cisco System, and to do the acquisitions in here, the first 5 acquisitions, to be part of that work globally with the acquisition team from here. And then I was relocated to the state to work from San Jose and to be responsible for leading the HR for the voice over IP. That was the one of the 6 emerging markets for Cisco. And that was a huge fun. I felt stupid at the beginning, because I was sitting there, I didn't know the laws in the state to the level that any local HR person would know. I wasn't sure even if I should say something from employees' relations, dealing with situation, conflict and things, but you gain that. You understand it better when you sit there. And the part which I've learned the most was when I sat there and was responsible for employees in 40 countries, and we did a lot of acquisitions and a lot of activities. I've heard a sentence which I kind of used before a lot, and I would never try to use it again, is that we're indifferent. In Italy, we are different. Whenever you wanted to implement something, there was somebody from the HR that says, oh, we can't do that, our union would not allow that, it's so complicated. And I've heard myself a few years ago saying that so many times. By the way, in Israel, we're different. We can't do that, we can't do the other. So it's a great point of view when you sit in the corporate and you try to make the 80-20 rule, like choosing the right alternative for the worldwide. You don't necessarily get all the decisions, but you are part of making the decisions. But from the other point, it's so difficult when you have local HR sitting there and kind of going against the plan and trying to destroy what the company wants to do without even understanding what it's doing and the impact for the whole organization. So that was a point which I took on with myself back when I came back. Then I had a chance to lead HR for 5,500 employees in Israel as the leading cellular company, Cellcom, for 7.5 years. That was the first time that I actually wanted to do rating and ranking, performance review, and things which were, I got so much conflict in the management team that they didn't want to go on that way, because I've learned strategic HR and how to do that in bigger organization. To do that shift, it was very difficult. Today, they really appreciate that. They feel like it was the right thing to do. But at the beginning, to be the first one, and you have to be really brave, but it's much easier. It's your audience, you understand that. Nobody can tell you that it's not possible to do that the union would not allow you or somebody else would not allow you, because you understand that. And you can actually make the influence. You are there all the time. That's much, much easier, in my opinion, to be leading an organization that you can actually understand it so well. Later on, I moved to the role at Checkpoint, and then I found myself when I traveled to the state, and they told me, you know, the Israelis, it's a nightmare sometimes. You know, sometimes you go to a discussion, you talk in English, and at the end of the day, you don't understand how they close it, and because they talked in Hebrew for a few minutes, and they just closed the issue, and we didn't understand anything. And there are a lot of situations where you don't really anticipate them, or you don't see, or the feeling was that they were coming and people were yelling at them. It's kind of, what kind of attitude would they have? You know, it's kind of, they were aggressive. My manager is aggressive to me. I felt really bad about that, the stress level, and things which, okay, and then we found that orientation to employees in Israel really helped so much, because they saw the country, they saw things that amazing in the country, and they said, you know, after being in the corridor and hearing people talking loud, that made me feel comfortable, that they weren't actually yelling at me. They were talking to me. And we bring a lot of, I think we bring a lot of tension to the energy, inspiration, but a lot of sometimes tension and our ambition to the room. And just one case that I was sitting at Cisco with the senior VP, and he called me to his room and says, you know, I was really shocked about situation, and we talked about it. And I said, why is that? And he said, somebody raised and showed his emotion. And I said, okay, what he was doing? And he said, he was turning red. And I said, what do you mean? I was starting to laugh. And I said, okay, he turned red. Well, he was upset. What do you want him to do? And he said, that wasn't professional. And I said, okay. And I said, you know, in my country, if they would shout on you, make you feel uncomfortable, something like that, we might say that he was too emotional. But turning red, that I've never heard before. So it was fun, because you learn to see the world differently. You have chance to see other challenges. It's very difficult to understand most of the challenges, but I think that made me feel really alive, and it gave me a lot of energy, and made me feel really good, because thank you for paying me for doing that, you know. It's kind of, I couldn't ask for more, so.
Thank you. Sharon, it will be interesting for me to direct you to hear your unique story, which I don't think there is any resemblance in other companies, where you had to manage, as an Israeli living in Spain, had to manage the Levant, meaning so can you speak to us about this experience, please?
Sure. So part of my experience at Cisco, just recently I came back from a relocation of 4 years in Madrid, Spain, where my previous role was actually leading what we called the MEDAL region, which is the Southern Europe, Central Europe, and Middle East and Africa from an HR organization point of view. And obviously this brings a lot of diverse population into the region, a lot of cultural background differences, and a lot of interesting challenges, as we say in Cisco. One of it that I think Ronit wants me to focus on today, but there's many stories, but the one that emotionally touched me was just not long ago when I was told that I have to manage a team in Middle East, and if I have any issue with that. So I said, you know, politics is not something that I am passionate about anyway, so I don't have any issue as long as they're human beings, right? And they said, of course they are. Let's make sure they feel comfortable. You know, you guys, you will meet your team in London, because obviously I would not fly to Beirut to meet them, right? So luckily enough, I was based in Spain at the time, so there was no issue for me flying out to meet them in London. And I met the manager there, the human resources leader for Levant, over coffee. It was, she, by the way, just was notified that I was going to be her manager and that I am Israeli. That was, by the way, 5 minutes before I met her. So you can imagine how she came to the meeting, and we were in a HR global meeting. There were some Europeans and Americans sitting in the room. I took her aside for some coffee, and you know, there's so many experiences you go through when you lead people and you try to inspire them as a leader. But that specific incident with Michelle, her name was Michelle Muarbis. She was sitting in front of me, and I said to her, listen, Michelle, you know, we're in an awkward situation. Obviously, there's no one in this room that would ever understand what you and I feel right now. I want to know if you are comfortable with this, because, you know, I am Israeli. I'm not going to hide this. Was born and raised in Israel, lived in I honestly do feel as an international citizen myself, because I did live across the world in many countries and regions, but in my heart and soul, I'm Israeli. My family's there, and I'm going to move back very soon. So I want to know if you can build the trust with me as your leader and your manager and the leadership team in Beirut, Egypt, Morocco, and all obviously the Levant region. And she started tearing. She said to me, you are the first Israeli I meet ever face to face. So you have to understand what I'm going through right now. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be an hour meeting. It ended up like 4 hours of emotional, I would say, discussion between two people, right? Not just leader and an employee, or you know, it's way beyond politics. And that for us really was an opportunity to do something different and really try. And I had the privilege that Cisco backed me up as a leader there to do to raise the relationships between us. And by the way, the Israeli team who's sitting right here in front of me was part of that. So they were managing the Levant team together with me from Israel. We couldn't have phone calls on the regular phone, so we did WebEx, the Cisco style. And we had a very good relationship with leading in a different culture, obviously very different environment. No stress whatsoever on politics. When there was, we actually really opened up. There was the elephant on the table that we discussed very openly. So that, that specific incident that once I shared with Nurit was probably a unique one for me as an Israeli leading HR organization in a global company. Couple of points to what you've said, and you really inspired me, I have to say, because I do believe that human resources today is going through an evolution. It's combined with the evolution of the marketplace in general. The business, the marketplace are going through a major transformation, as well as the workforce. And I think HR, as HR leaders, we have such an amazing opportunity to influence the business and really bring value, not by just staffing or employee engagement stuff or stuff, but really partnering with a business, speaking their language, understanding their challenges, and bringing value to the table. It takes courage. It takes courage, by the way, also to position ourselves not as service providers only, but real business drivers. I always say to my team, and they know that, the business is not my boss. The business is my partner. And that's the way I position it. And throughout my career in Cisco, it was always, whenever I had a new client, which I call, we made sure that this is very clear to both sides and set expectations correctly. What can you expect from me? What can I expect from you? And how do we bring value to the business? The bottom line, to me, is very simple. A human resource organization is here to make a difference and bring value to the business, bottom line. We're not here to be nice and to give feedback, but really to create a difference and influence. And that's what drives me and what really encourages me in this function. And I agree with what you said before, that we do have to open up and really bring value not only in one dimension, but really understanding different disciplines and trying to throw that and bring value whenever we have an opportunity to. I have also the privilege to sit in a board of a startup, which I have to say that I love Cisco and I love working for Cisco, but one of my excitements today in life, obviously out of my personal life, which is my 3 girls, is sitting in a board in a startup and really understanding something very different, learning from what the challenges are between the chairman and the leadership team. It's just fascinating. It's for me a university. It's studying a different leadership challenge, and I encourage you all to try and go to that direction. It's really fun.
Thank you, Sharon. And since we passed the time already, I would offer 5 minutes of questions if you have to any of the people sitting here. Yes, please.
I have a question. There was some comments here about the HR of the Israeli HR. Can you just explain, maybe from Shimon Dan, you said it a few times, that is it the problem of Israeli HR not being marketable enough outside, or that the Israeli companies don't allow more internationals to come on their board? Which way is it?
Well, we are very unique. We have the headquarters in Israel. So in Israel, we, so to say, around the world. Bringing expats or non-Israelis into Israel is an issue. And by the way, we have now, for the first time, the head of Europe, Ignacio, a Spanish guy, who moved into Israel. And he moved, so it happened accidentally, together with Jeremy, the head of the CEO of Teva, and with a guy who is running Israeli Chemicals.
Yeah.
Practically, I heard they live in the same building, Jeremy and...
Yeah?
Where is it? So look, Israeli Chemicals, Matsushima Magan, and Teva are having now finally
a transformation.
Non-Israeli people into Israel. I see it as a sign. But Israel is unique in that, and there are not many, expats that would come here. This is one. Second is that culture. We tend to be ignorant as an Israeli, and we tend to think. And I know I'm generalizing, but that's the way we are perceived by the non-Israeli. When I entered Matsushima Magan and I went around and I interviewed people, and you were talking about the shouting piece, but they also perceive the Israelis as people who always know. Yeah, that's always know. You always know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what you taught, when we get emotional, we move into Hebrew. What they see, they describe. We are in a meeting, and Ignacio. In our management are 12 Israelis and Ignacio, and he said, I am the only Sfaradi in your management. So he worked long enough with our company to know what Sfaradi and Ashkenazi is. So it's not by accident that he was moving here. By the way, he was moving here. It was hell of rain, and it was a war. To remind you, in the same week he was moving here. He said, what a welcome. After this, nothing can happen anymore. So just to the piece of the Arab. So they say, you tend to move in the meetings into Hebrew, you shout on each other, everybody is sure that, there is something really bad going on, and then when you finish, you just hug and kiss and go to sleep. They can't understand it, they cannot figure it out. So just another example for this cross-culture thing.
I'd like to add to that, because one of my observations is very typical to my way or no way attitude. And I think attitude here is a major component, because as we move to become more and more global and the world is becoming more and more flat, I believe that as Israelis, we need to be more open-minded and really embrace the difference, right? We're talking about inclusion and diversity in corporates. This is something that is very well known in corporate America, but as Israelis, we're not always as diverse and inclusive. And we are either my way or no way, and that's it. And we're very stubborn, by the way. So different cultures deal with that very differently. And I think that we need to really open our minds a little bit and listen and embrace change.
So it's more our flexibility or our ability to integrate others, not the issue, the issue of Israeli HRs moving to international.
I think there's a lot of opportunities, but it's both ways.
Yeah. I think it's both.
Yeah.
And also from the results, there is a trace of what you've just said. Doing it my way, because my way is best. I know best. But there is also a nice balance, which I hope it continues to develop with larger numbers. That ability to tune in to your audience, and therefore, if you tune in, if you're empathic and you're able to tolerate ambiguity, there is a stronger capacity to not come across as command and control fully. And that is the direction, I think, and more balanced.
Right.
Yeah.
Annie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think the world is grappling with diversity, right? And diversity is not male and female.
No.
Right? Diversity is for everybody. Everybody's doing business in the Middle East, everybody's doing business in Russia, in the Eastern European part. So unless you can get on the bandwagon of realizing that you're an international company, you're dead. You will die. So I think the concept here is actually bigger than that. Israelis, not Israelis. Do you think Italians don't have the same problem? I live in Europe. I'm a Russian-born Australian passport living in Switzerland, in a completely male-dominated world, right? And one of the absolutely few females in an executive search firm, right? I know what it's like to build from nothing. And so listen, right? Spaniards, I've worked with all of them. And it's the same issue everywhere. It's about people being comfortable most with people who are like themselves. Okay, let's admit that tick. Okay, we're all good. We got our 5 brownie points. The point is, business doesn't work like this. And at the end of the day, you have to talk about diversity. And I think companies that are smart and that think 5 minutes beyond the next 5 minutes, it's really looking at that. And we're working with Amos now. I'll not make it a secret. I've had candidates. The first thing they do is they go to the website. They want to have a look at the diversity. They want to have a look at social corporate responsibility. And a lot of them will turn around and say, thank you, no thank you. Yeah. Not because it's Israelis and because they're Arab lovers. No, it's because they're looking at the social corporate responsibility of the company and they're not yet convinced. Coming off a Cisco or a Apple type of branding and marketing. Yeah. So that would be my thing, is to elevate it to the top. And again, I go back to that HR group. Why not start a really senior lobby group here to think about what are the biggest issues? And then the other thing is, because I live in Switzerland, and as you know, Switzerland is a hub of a lot of oligarchs, a lot of companies setting up businesses there. And I'm invited to a lot of parties, and I see a lot of Israelis. And I have to say that there is a division of people staying very separate. So it's also thinking about providing development to people that says, I'm not an Israeli, I'm actually an international citizen. Right? Not coming in with a flag, but rather coming in with a, because everybody will come in with a flag and that'll be a great time.
This is a nice way of kind of fitting it all together. Attitude, style, makes you more versatile to fit in organizational culture and the wider culture and the wider business world. And to your point, the question you've asked me a while ago, the coaching, the attitudinal change that needs to happen. There's a lot of space for some good work to be done. Exactly.
That's the wrong way to think ahead.
Yeah. The bases are there. That's right.
This is part of the talent issue that I was talking before. And by the way, one of the first initiatives of Jeremy, the new head of Teva, Stefan, the head of Chemical Israel, and Erez Vigodman, my CEO, and we are going, they met, the three of them, and we are going to build a leadership, so to say, the three groups. We're going to create a leadership school to train people on a global perspective in Israel. That's one of the initiatives that came out.
Very nice.
So the Russians did this about 5 years ago. The Russians realized they had a brain drain and they had not enough talent, and it was all expats. Like Stefan Borgas, I mean, you've got now expats coming in to run the top companies. Same thing as we saw in Russia. And at some point, a couple of the oligarchs came together, and it was done by the oligarchs, unfortunately. That's the only way money would come. And they set up the Skolkovo School, which is, and then we were mandated to find the person who would run it, who was going to be obviously a foreigner, who had the whole kind of focus on and vision on development. So this is wonderful to hear. Wonderful to hear.
And we are meeting in the end of December.
Wow.
Let's hope this one.
And we have
Great initiative.
a lot of depth in the data we have that we hope we can continue to build with your help. And EMDA has done a fantastic job so far. And there are no reasons why this is going to not go further. Because we can back all this up, not only by what Heli is saying, but through research and through data from other cultures and organizations.
Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you'll take with yourself some insights from this meeting. And of course, thank you to our participants. I enjoyed it. I had fun. I hope.
Thank you, Louise.